Hey, hi Jeffrey, how are you?
I am fine, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. I saw on your bio you're from Boston, yeah?
I live in Boston now. Yeah. Uh-huh. I'm a native of Ohio, but I've been in Boston longer than I was in Ohio.
Oh, okay, all right. Because I'm from Boston originally. I lived there most of my life, but
Oh, okay.
I now live in Vegas. Have since 2005. 2005. So it's been 15 years.
Quite a different environment, I imagine. I've never been to Vegas. I only know it through the films.
Well, Boston has four seasons. Vegas has two, and it is a bit of a change. And Boston has trees, and Vegas doesn't. So but anyways, so you are an author, a science fiction author, yeah?
That's right. Yep.
Okay. You want to just tell us a little of your backstory, and then we can talk about your book?
Well, I've been writing science fiction really for my entire working life. Um, I started writing stories, well, really when I was a kid, but seriously when I was in college and the years after college. And started my first short story was published in 1970. I want to say no, not 70, 74, in a little magazine called Fiction Magazine. Mostly, I've focused on novels since the mid 1970s, and most recently, I've been working on a long-running series called the Chaos Chronicles, um, which is a hard, somewhere beyond the borderline between hard science fiction and space opera, or uh, character-driven. I'm set out in space in the galaxy, but I'm really most interested in my characters, and it's kind of an interesting lot of a couple of humans and some aliens and sentient robots, and um, where where life takes them.
I've had this conversation with other authors, and there seems to be so many different genres out there than what was there when I was growing up. We had about five, and now there's about
Right?
500.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, what is space opera? I've never heard of that.
Well, space opera is a term that's actually sort of evolved over the years. The term itself comes from horse opera, kind of a Western adventure, and it was used in, I guess in the 1950s and 60s to denote a sort of pulp action adventure set in space. And then it was sort of a pejorative term originally, but now it's used more to talk about stories that involve oh, galactic civilizations and interstellar commerce and adventures and anything that um, is sort of a large canvas story set out in space. So you could, in some ways, call Star Trek a space opera. Um, Star Wars is sort of on the edge of it, but Star Wars is a little bit more fantasy like. Um, and hard science fiction focuses more on the scientific underpinnings of a story. And at its extreme, it's really oriented towards science. At its, well, I guess its other extreme, the science is there and is a part of the basis of the story, but the story is really focused more on the characters and the psychology.
So, in hard science fiction, if you had, for example, a flying car, would you have to actually describe scientifically how this thing would work?
Oh, no, no. Maybe back in the 1950s, you would have. I think most people now understand these things, or, well, my philosophy is you give just enough detail to make it feel real to the reader. You want them to experience it as though they were seeing it on a movie screen and to not have to focus on. You might provide a little information if it's of interest, um, but it's not necessary. I mean, things like
Okay.
faster than light travel have been part of science fiction for decades, and different writers have different ways of making that happen. So far as we know, none of them work yet in real life. Um, so in my stories, I maybe give a line or two to explain how this happens, but I don't go into great detail.
Are you a Star Trek fan?
Well, I've loved Star Trek since I was a kid. So I haven't. I've had mixed reactions to some of the later iterations of the show, but fundamentally, I do love Star Trek. Yeah.
So you're a fan of the original series
Well, I
most.
loved the original series. I loved Next Generation. And, they all had their flaws and their hiccups in getting started. Um, my wife and I recently rewatched all of Next Generation, all 7 seasons, and it took it about 3 seasons to really get to where you would call it a good show. And then at its best, it was terrific. And, then we've had Voyager and Deep Space Nine and Discovery, Enterprise. Uh, it's a mixed lot. The most recent Picard I thought was really quite good.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that one. I've seen the Patrick Stewart one.
Yeah, that's the Patrick Stewart one.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
Okay. So there
yeah,
was only
a
one.
recent after he's retired from Starfleet. So if you mean the older Patrick Stewart one, that's Star Trek Next Generation. That aired in
Right.
the 1980s and maybe early 90s.
Right. That's the one I can remember.
Yeah.
I don't think I've watched anything recent, but I have seen the movies
Hmm.
that they've done recently with Chris Pine as
Right.
Captain
Right.
Kirk, and I didn't think those were too bad.
They were interesting. It was a little jarring at first because they basically uh, did a different Star Trek universe. But they were a lot of fun. Seeing different actors play these iconic roles was kind of interesting,
Yeah.
and I thought the actors did a good job.
The one thing that was really different between the original Star Trek series and the Next Generation, I thought, was character development.
Yes,
They seemed to be kind of two-dimensional in the original series, but the Next Generation, I think, took it where that one sort of left off.
I think most TV in the 1960s was fairly two-dimensional. They certainly developed the character of Spock and some elements of the other leading characters, but you're right, it didn't go nearly as far in exploring the characters as they did in a couple decades later in Next Generation and in the series that followed. I think all of TV storytelling has evolved more to where character development is intrinsic to it, and you expect it as a viewer.
I think so. I think as the viewers have gotten a little more sophisticated, TV in the 50s and 60s was almost cartoon-like.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, there was a cartoon version of Star Trek, the original cast. A few years after the series was canceled, they did an animated series that was actually surprisingly good, considering it was done on a very low budget. They had the voices of the original actors, and the writers were a little more free to write stories that weren't dependent on expensive and not very good special effects and set design and things.
I think I remember that one. That was way back, yeah?
Yeah,
Like a
yeah,
Saturday morning cartoon.
maybe the early 70s. I don't remember
Yeah.
exactly when it came out. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds very familiar. Okay, let's talk about your book. What's the name of the book you're promoting?
Well, it's actually a two-part novel, 2 volumes. It's called The Reefs of Time and Crucible of Time. They are books 5 and 6 of the Chaos Chronicles, which I've been writing since the mid 1990s. Um, it, they were written as a single novel entitled The Reefs of Time, but it took me 11 years to write it and finish it, and it was such a huge book that I decided to split it into 2 volumes and release it that way, one right after another. I didn't make the readers wait a year between volumes, but so because it's within the Chaos Chronicles series, each book is sort of a self-contained story, pointing to the next, but not dependent on the next. And in this case, it really is a single story cut in 2 parts. So I called the two the out of time sequence just to distinguish it from the other volumes.
Is 11 years to write it? Is that a normal amount of time, or is that
God, no.
rather long?
Ridiculously long period of time. There were a number of reasons why it took me so long, but none of them are good arguments for how to make a career thrive.
You want to give us just a synopsis, or
Well, this series, and we get started with the series in Neptune Crossing. We're situated on Triton, the large moon of Neptune, where the first encounter with a sentient alien artifact occurs. And that story takes place there primarily, but it ends with our character kind of being thrown not just out of the solar system, but out to the edge of the galaxy, where there's this enormous structure called Shipworld, where thousands of races are living together. And it's a sort of arc for civilizations that have been threatened or destroyed, and saving samples of civilizations. And our human, John Vandikat, meets up with some aliens, and they're more or less thrown into planetary situations where a civilization is in trouble, and they are sent to try to help and see if they can pull them out of the fire. And it takes them to an ocean world in a book called The Infinite Sea, and it takes them to the Orion Nebula in Sunborn. And in the newer books, it splits them up. Half the team travels back into very deep time, billions of years in the past, to try to find the source of a malicious AI that has found a way to move forward in time and is threatening a number of worlds. That's the broad scope of it. It's a story that involves an expanding cast of characters, and it has it has reluctant heroes. It has interesting aliens and humor, and all the ingredients, I hope, of an exciting story. And it has, when I say it is somewhere in the borderland between hard science fiction and space opera. There's some real science in there, but I stretch it a whole lot. So, for example, I use quantum entanglement as a method to send people back in time. And the quantum scientists who work in quantum entanglement would probably scratch their heads and say, well, I'm not sure you can really say that, but they probably couldn't say it's impossible either. So I made it a big playground as I was writing the story.
isn't the idea of alien life kind of the same idea, in the sense that nobody can confirm or deny it?
Well, that's certainly true. We haven't confirmed any yet. I think most writers, probably most people who think about the subject, believe that with all those worlds out there, there certainly must be other life, but can't prove it yet.
You think it's going to happen in our lifetime?
I hope so. I think it's entirely possible there might be life beneath the surface of Europa, say, or Enceladus, or maybe beneath the surface of the soil on Mars. I don't think we're too likely to encounter, I don't know, sentient macro life that we would recognize as being like us in the solar system. Might come from outside the solar system. I think it'd be pretty exciting if it happened.
I think in the state of the world currently, we need a complete alien invasion. And then we would stop pointing our guns at each other and point them up at the sky.
Well, some of
We'd
us
unite
thought
the world.
COVID would do that. Common enemy to unite us.
Yeah, but who wants to rally around a virus? That's just awful.
Well, yeah, true.
I mean, I would hope for a loftier kind of common enemy, than a virus in a petri dish. That just seems not the greatest thing. I don't think people are going to get too excited over a virus.
well, you get a little bit excited when it's threatening your life. But no, I agree that at least from a dramatic point of view, spaceships from outside, from another star system are a lot more exciting than a
That's
virus.
what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Jeffrey, we do have to wrap this up. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
I do. It's at starrigger.net. The name Star Rigger comes from a different series of books I have written, but it's uh, like the word star and the word rigger run together, .net. And that's where I have all the information about my books and my blog. And if you just do a search on Jeffrey A. Carver, you'll find it. And I just want to make a quick mention that in the last year, I've really been working hard on getting my books into audiobook. Hired one of the best narrators in the business to do it, and that's been a really interesting and challenging and I think fruitful endeavor. So you can get all of these, all of the books are available in audiobook. The last one isn't quite into Audible yet, but it will be soon.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Enjoyed talking.